My parents sold my childhood home to fund my sister's wedding. So I bought it back in cash and kicked every one of them out. I've always been the forgotten son in my family. I'm 32 now, financially stable, single by choice, working in cybersecurity, and living in a city far from the one I grew up in. But there's still one place that never left me, no matter how far I ran, the house I was raised in. The only place that ever felt like mine. It was a 2-story colonial with peeling white paint, creaky floorboards, and an attic that smelled like old books and insulation. Most people would have called it run down. I called it safe. Growing up, I was the buffer, the easy kid. My sister screamed for attention, my parents gave it, and I adapted. I made blanket forts in the attic when they fought. I learned guitar in my room with the door locked, trying to drown out the yelling downstairs. And every Sunday, I helped my grandfather in the backyard garden, digging up carrots, pulling weeds, learning to listen. He was the only adult who ever truly saw me. One summer, while trimming the hedges, my grandfather wiped his brow, looked at the house and said, "Someday, this'll be yours." "I'll make sure of it." I didn't say anything, just nodded and kept clipping. But I never forgot it. That house held every version of me. The scared boy, the angry teenager, the quiet dreamer who escaped into code and music. It was mine in the ways that mattered until it wasn't. And even now, years later, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the screen door slam, feel the cool basement tiles under my feet, and smell the tomato vines from the garden after the rain. That house built me. So when I found out what they did to it, I didn't get mad right away. I went silent. And that was worse. My sister, Danielle, has always been the princess. 2 years younger than me, but treated like she was made of glass and gold. Private school since 3rd grade, a brand new SUV for her 17th birthday, spa weekends with my mom, tropical vacations with our dad. Me? I was the one flipping burgers at 16 to buy my own second-hand laptop. They called her delicate, like that was some kind of explanation. "You know how sensitive Danielle is," my mom would say whenever I dared to ask why she got everything handed to her. My dad's favorite line was, "She just needs more support than you." Translation? You'll survive. She's allowed to crumble. I busted my ass through college, 2 jobs, night classes, eating ramen 5 days a week. Danielle? She switched majors 4 times and spent a semester in Italy, finding herself on my parents' dime. They never batted an eye. When I asked for help covering textbooks one semester, they told me to be a man and figure it out. Christmases were the worst. She got iPhones, designer bags, and diamond bracelets. I got flannel shirts. One year, I saved up for months and bought my dad a vintage watch I knew he'd wanted. He barely glanced at it before gushing over the leather wallet Danielle gave him, which I later found out she charged to his credit card. But the real kicker was how they always turned it around on me. Anytime I voiced even a hint of frustration, I was called ungrateful, dramatic, jealous. "You're always so bitter," my mom said once. "Can't you just be happy for your sister?" Happy for what? Watching her drown in privilege while I clawed for every inch? Danielle learned early that tears bought her anything. She cried they caved. She screamed they coddled. I stayed quiet, and they ignored me. And somehow, I was always the problem. It had been a few years since I moved out west, finally making decent money in cybersecurity. I had my own condo, a dog, and a quiet life that didn't involve emotional landmines every time I walked through a front door. I kept in touch with my cousin Jake back home, mostly through texts and memes. But that afternoon he called me, voice low, hesitant. "Hey man, did you hear they sold the house?" I actually laughed. "What house?" "Your house. Your parents' place." My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard a word. No call, no text, no heads up, not even a damn forwarded listing. I pulled over on the side of the road and called my mom immediately. She answered like nothing was wrong. "Yeah, we sold it. Danielle's wedding is coming up, and the venue she wants isn't cheap." That's how she said it, like she was discussing what kind of bread to buy at the store. I didn't even know Danielle was getting married, let alone that they'd sold our home to pay for it. I wasn't told, I managed, trying to keep my voice even. Oh, don't be so dramatic, she huffed. It's not like you lived there anymore. We needed the money. Danielle deserves a proper wedding. I didn't ask about the buyer. I didn't ask about the price. I just sat there, staring out at traffic, while the house I grew up in, the place that kept me sane when everything else fell apart, was gone. And then came the final punch. You're not on the guest list, by the way. Danielle thought it'd be awkward. I didn't speak. I didn't hang up. I just sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, hearing my mother breathe like she hadn't just shattered something in me I hadn't even realized was still intact. That was the moment something inside me changed. Not grief, not anger, just a cold, still quiet. The kind that comes right before a storm. A week later, I flew home. I told no one. I rented a car, drove straight to the old neighborhood, and parked across the street like some kind of stranger. The house looked smaller, emptier. The curtains were drawn, porch light dead, grass overgrown like it already knew no one cared anymore. The for sale sign was gone, the windows bare. It was just hollow. I sat there in silence, memories crashing in like waves. The creak of the floorboards when I'd sneak downstairs at night. The smell of burnt cinnamon on Christmas mornings. My grandfather's laugh echoing from the garden. That house had held my whole damn life. And now it was stripped bare for a dress, a DJ, and a 5-hour reception for a woman who couldn't remember my birthday. I don't even remember walking up the steps to my parents' condo, but I do remember the look on my mother's face when she opened the door. Did you really sell the house without telling me? I asked. My voice was too calm. That scared me more than yelling ever could have. My dad stepped in. We didn't think you'd care. You haven't been home in years. You sold it for a wedding, I said. You didn't even invite me. My sister strolled in wearing silk pajamas, sipping coffee like she was on vacation. God, are you still going on about that? It was my wedding. Not everything is about you. Then my mother chimed in. You're being selfish, making this about a house. You never even liked living there. I could have screamed. I could have told them about the nights I cried into a pillow while they praised her spelling bee ribbons, about how that house kept me alive. But I didn't, because I realized something in that moment. They didn't see me as family. They never had. And they never would. I couldn't sleep for days after that visit. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the creak in the upstairs hallway, the hum of the old radiator in winter, the way light used to fall through the living room blinds at sunset. It was like my mind refused to let the house go, even if everyone else had. Out of pure masochism, I checked the county property records online. I expected to see a closed deal, but instead I saw this strange red stamp. Pending withdrawal. I blinked. That's when I called Nate, an old friend from college who now worked in real estate back home. Check this address for me, I told him, rattling off the street and number like it was a prayer. 5 minutes later, he called me back, low voice, full of curiosity. Dude, that deal never finalized. The investor bailed. Something about financing delays and zoning issues. It's back on the market, quietly, owners getting desperate, cash buyers only. My heart started racing. This was the kind of twist you don't get twice in life. A second chance. A crack in the timeline. I could have walked away and let the pain fade. But I didn't want peace. I wanted proof. I wanted a key. I said. All cash, no loans, no partners. Can you make it happen? You serious? Dead serious. I moved fast. Pulled from my savings, liquidated a few investments, called in a favor or two from people who owed me. Within 48 hours, we were drawing up an offer. Not under my name. That would be too easy for them to trace. I created a trust. Simple. Unassuming. Invisible. They thought they stripped me of my past. But they were about to find out. I never lost it. I just hadn't reclaimed it. Yet. 3 weeks later, I owned the house. Not bought, not won, owned.
On paper, the deed listed the Oakmere Restoration Trust, just a shell name.
But behind it, me, no calls to my parents.
No public announcements, no gloating.
Just silence. Surgical, precise, and personal. The day I got the keys, I drove there alone. I parked in the same spot I had as a kid, when I used to sneak out and sit on the hood of my car just to breathe. I stood at the front door, hand hovering over the knob, heart pounding like I was 15 again and about to get grounded. But this time, I turned the key, the smell hit me first. Dust, old wood, faint mildew from years of neglect. But beneath it, the ghost of something warm, something like home. I walked the halls slowly, fingers grazing the banister my grandfather carved by hand. The kitchen still had the burn mark from the time Danielle left a towel on the stove and blamed it on me. The attic door still creaked when I pulled it, same as always. My childhood bedroom was cold and empty, but the indentation where my bed used to sit was still etched into the carpet like a scar that hadn't faded.
I stood in that room for a long time.
Then I smiled. The renovation started the next day. I tore out the water-damaged drywall my dad never bothered to fix,
Rewired the outdated light fixtures.
refinished the hardwood floors my mum always complained were too much work. I painted the walls in deep navy and charcoal, the kind of colours no one ever let me choose growing up, and Danielle's old room. I turned it into my office. Clean, minimal, powerful. Hers was the first door I replaced. I didn't just buy the house, I rewrote it.
Room by room, memory by memory, and they still had no idea I wasn't invited to the wedding.
But thanks to Instagram and a cousin with zero filter, I got front row seats to the train wreck. It was obscene. The venue alone had its own zip code, a vineyard estate with fountains, chandeliers, and staff in tuxedos. Danielle wore a custom Vera Wang gown, $14,000 minimum. Easy. There were fireworks.
Live violinists.
A cocktail hour with signature drinks named after her and the groom. My cousin Jake texted me, "Dude, it's like the Oscars for narcissists." I tried to scroll past it all, pretend I didn't care. But one post stopped me cold. It was my mum, smiling like she hadn't gutted me weeks ago, captioned, "A perfect day for our perfect daughter. Worth every sacrifice." That's when I called Jake. "You know they sold the house to fund this, right?" He hesitated. "Yeah. And they also remortgaged their condo." "What?"
They're drowning, man.
Took out a second loan. Your dad mentioned it at the rehearsal dinner like it was no big deal. Said, she only gets married once. I let that sit. But karma,
As always, doesn't check RSVPs. Because just 2 hours into the reception, after the first dance,
after the champagne toasts, Danielle's maid of honor took the mic.
her ex-best friend.
Drunk, bitter, and holding receipts. "Cheers to my girl," she slurred, "who spent half the engagement in another man's bed." Silence, then chaos. The grooms stormed off. The DJ killed the music. Guests started whispering, filming, leaving. Danielle screamed.
My mother cried.
My father tried to bribe the maid of honor to delete her video. Too late. It was already online. But by the next day, they were posting family photos with captions like, "A magical day full of love." Magical? Sure, if your idea of magic is watching a castle collapse in real time.
And I hadn't even made my move yet. It was a Thursday afternoon when I heard the knock. I'd just finished setting up new bookshelves in what used to be the living room, now my reading space.
Light spilled through the cleaned windows. Soft jazz played in the background. The house felt alive again. Mine. The knock came again, louder this time. I opened the door, not expecting much.
And there they were, my parents. My dad looked tired, older.
My mom was gripping a folder like it might shield her. They both blinked when they saw me, like I wasn't supposed to exist here. "What?"
What are you doing here?
my mother asked, her voice brittle. I leaned casually against the doorframe.
I live here, she frowned.
"But this house was sold." I nodded. It was, and then it wasn't. Long story. My dad looked past me like trying to piece together a puzzle he already knew he lost. We, left some things in the basement storage. Tools, winter coats, a few boxes. We wanted to get them before the new owners locked everything up. I stepped back just enough for them to see the hallway behind me, the polished wood, the fresh paint, the absence of their chaos. Then I said it, calm, clear. Actually, I am the new owner. My mother blinked.
You? Me? My father's jaw tightened. But how?
Cash, through a trust. You didn't think I'd check up on the house? I shrugged. Guess that makes two of us. They just stood there.
No congratulations.
No apologies. Just silence, like I had stolen something, when all I'd done was take back what was mine. Eventually my mum whispered, "We just wanted our things." "You've got 10 minutes, I said, stepping aside. After that I'm changing the locks. The door stayed open, but something between us had already shut forever. They had barely made it halfway down the basement stairs when the front door swung open again. Danielle. Storming in like she owned the place. In heels,
Full makeup and an attitude sharp enough to slice drywall. "I need my wedding boxes," she snapped.
not even glancing at me. Mum said they were still in the old linen closet.
"I'm grabbing them before you pull another stunt." I stepped into the doorway. "No," she blinked. "Excuse me?"
"You're not walking through this house like you own it," she laughed, sharp, incredulous. "This is our family home." I pulled the deed from the kitchen counter, unfolded it slowly and held it up. My name, my trust.
"My house was your family home," I said.
Until you sold it for cupcakes and fireworks. My dad moved closer.
"This house has been in our family for decades."
You think buying it gives you the right to block your own parents?
I stared at him.
You had a right.
"Until you signed it away." Danielle rolled her eyes and tried to shove past me. I blocked her with my arm. 10 minutes, I said coldly.
Anything in the basement storage. That's it.
"After that, you're trespassing." My mother started crying.
My father muttered something about disrespectful little punk. Danielle stood frozen, jaw clenched, like she was still waiting for someone to hand her the world. No one moved. I walked to the kitchen, picked up my phone and dialed the locksmith. "Yeah, it's time. Replace all exterior locks. Today," Danielle's voice cracked. "You're really doing this? Over a house?" I turned to face her. "You didn't just take a house. You erased my childhood like it never mattered." They didn't speak again. They gathered a few dusty boxes and left. No hugs.
No closure.
Just the sound of the new lock clicking into place behind them. It didn't take long for the smear campaign to begin. 3 days after I changed the locks, Danielle posted a black and white photo of our childhood house on Instagram with the caption, "My brother stole my wedding legacy. This house was supposed to be our family's forever." Cue the flood of comments. "You deserve better. He sounds jealous." Cut him off. She loved playing the victim, and her audience was more than ready to cheer her on. My parents followed up with a Facebook post, naturally. A long, rambling paragraph about how family should stick together and how our son has chosen
money over love. They CC'd the extended family.
Through group texts and WhatsApp, chains like it was some kind of emotional press.
Release. Suddenly I was the villain, cold, ungrateful, emotionally unstable, according to one aunt who hadn't spoken to me in 6 years. I didn't respond.
Not once. I let them scream into the void while I sat on my newly refinished porch sipping coffee. The silence was louder than anything I could have said. And then karma started doing its thing. First, Danielle's marriage collapsed, publicly and painfully. Turns out the groom had seen the viral mic drop video from the wedding, and while he tried to move past it, he never really did. 2 months in, she came home to find her stuff boxed by the door, and a note that read, "You never loved me. You loved the spotlight." Then came the foreclosure notice for my parents. Jake sent me a screenshot. Turns out they defaulted on the second mortgage they took to fund the wedding spectacle. Couldn't keep up with the payments. Their condo went up for auction by the end of the year. No one offered to bail them out. Not even the golden child. They told the world I was heartless. But funny how quiet everyone got when the lies ran out of oxygen. It was 2 years later, during a quiet Thanksgiving I didn't attend, when the truth finally surfaced. Jake called me the next day, his voice low like he was afraid to even say it out loud.
"I need to tell you something," he said. "It's about the house. About your grandfather. I braced myself. He left it to you," Jake whispered.
In his will, the original copy.
"I found it in an old box at Aunt Lila's. Clear as day, he left the house in your name."
Said it was for the only one who ever treated it like home. I didn't speak.
I just sat there with the phone pressed to my ear like I was 20 again, waiting for someone to finally tell me I mattered. "There's more," Jake continued.
Your parents, they had it altered. They convinced the lawyer to issue a revised version, said the original was outdated.
"They told the family you didn't want the house." I felt something shift in my chest.
Not shock.
Not even rage, just confirmation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't bitter. I was robbed. They didn't just sell my childhood home. They stole a promise, a legacy.
A piece of my identity that had been quietly, lovingly set aside for me by the only man who ever made me feel seen. All those years I thought I was chasing closure, reclaiming something that had been taken for granted, but
I wasn't. I was restoring something that had always been mine. Every plank I repaired, every wall I repainted, every creaky stair I fixed. It wasn't just revenge.
it was justice, restoration, a quiet return to the life my grandfather believed I deserved. That house didn't just hold my memories.
It held the truth, and now, finally, so did I. The house doesn't creak as much anymore. The floors are sturdy now.
The walls don't flake paint when the seasons change. The old attic has been converted into a quiet loft, where I host weekly support meetings for young adults who've aged out of the foster system or left toxic homes behind. We sit in a circle, drink coffee, and talk about boundaries, healing, and what it means to start over when your roots feel poisoned. Most of them don't know my story. Not all of it, anyway. They just know the house feels safe, and that's enough. During the school year, I rent out the upstairs rooms to first-gen college students who need affordable housing and a little stability. They leave notes on the fridge, cook together, bring life back into the space. One of them planted tomatoes in the backyard last spring.
I smiled when I saw them blooming.
My grandfather would have liked that. I kept one room exactly the way I remembered it, mine. Not as a shrine, but as a reminder. The rest of the house? It's alive again, full of laughter, arguments, late-night music, and people who don't have to shrink themselves to fit in. I don't think about my parents much, or Danielle. They faded out like background noise I've long since muted. The revenge stopped mattering the day I realized silence was louder than any scream. This house no longer aches when I walk through the door. It breathes.
It welcomes.
It stands not as a monument to what I lost, but to what I rebuilt. I used to think family was something you were born into, a permanent brand you couldn't wash off no matter how much it burned. But now I know the truth. Some families you're born into.
Others you build yourself.